to Teacher University. In this series, we are going to look at essential ideas in various topics in mathematics. My name is Banha, and today we are going to look at how different essential ideas in this topic play out in various common applications as well as unusual ones. In solving problems related to percentage, students need some basic skills. For example, they would need to be able to do calculations like that quickly and hopefully mentally. So they should be able to say that, well, I know 10% of any number. 10% of 300 is really just 30. So skills like that, students must be fluent at such computations. And if they do know 10%, we also hope that they are able to compute 5% readily, using simple ideas of halving to get whatever they should get. Likewise, if they know that the whole is 300, they should also know things like 1%. We call this benchmarks. Students must be good at benchmark values. What is 1%? What is 10%? And use those to figure out a range of values, including 5%, and in this case, 6%. So I suppose students might say, well, if 5% is 15 and 1% is 3, 6% is not difficult. It's just a sum of these two, 18. Some people prefer to start with 1% and work out 6% by multiplying that by 6 to also get the same value of 18. So that is one basic skill. In solving word problems related to percentage, these are among some basic ideas that students use all the time. Perhaps they know the total number and they are told that part of that number has certain property. For example, there are 50 children. 10 of them are boys. And they should be able to very quickly, fluently, and hopefully mentally compute such percentages. So they should be able to say things like, well, this is really 10 out of 50. So 10 out of 50 are boys. There are 10 boys in a group of 50 children. So from there, they are able to say that that is really 1/5 of the children. And they should know that 1/5 is 20%. So calculations like that should be done fluently, and as I said, hopefully, mentally. And sometimes the numbers are a little bit more difficult for some students. Like a person may have $200 and he spent $70. And students should be able to very quickly calculate the $70 as a percentage of the 200. So calculations like that should be done quickly. Fluency with such ideas is pretty important in subsequent success in problem solving. So students should be able to say that that fraction is really just 35 hundredths or 35%. In a word problem like this, a shopkeeper had 500 gift bags to sell. Each gift bag cost $5. and the total sales he made is given, $2,150. The question could be, what percent of the gift bags were sold? In this case, students need to know that, well, if I know the number of gift bags sold, then to calculate the percent of the gift bags sold is not difficult. It's really just whatever number that was sold out of the ones that he had, written as a percent. The question is, what is that number? Since every bag costs $5 and the total sales is $2,150, many students can see that that information can be derived by doing a simple division. Taking the total sales, dividing that by the price of a bag would give them the information they need to find out the percentage of gift bags that were sold. So in rather familiar problems such as that, often the information they need, the number of gift bags sold, is not given to them directly. In this case, is it given to them in a context that requires some simple calculation. Of course, in other instances, such information may well be given in pictorial forms such as pie charts. Many familiar word problems involve situations like that, where the total is given and they're told some information about that total. For example, 30% of a group of children are boys. There are 140 children. How many girls are there? In such instances, students need to know that they can calculate 10% of anything pretty quickly. So they would say, well, 10% is really just 14 children in this case. And if I know 10%, calculating 30% is not difficult at all. I suppose in this case, multiplying 14 by 3 to get to the final number. And once they have that, they can get the 70% either by subtracting from 140, or they could use the 10% to obtain the 70% by saying that amount is simply 7 times of 14 and work out the product. Situations involving discounts are pretty common in percentage word problem. For example, very often they are told how much items cost, and they are told that that shop is offering a 25% discount, or this shop is offering a 20% discount. So students should be able to calculate 25% of $82, 20% of $80 pretty quickly. For example, they should realize that 25% is really just 1/4. So to find out 25%, in this case, is just dividing the quantity by 4. I suppose bar models, diagrams are helpful if students cannot see the relevant calculation. Likewise, students must be able to work with 10% rather quickly. So 10% of 800, that's 80. And once you know 10%, calculating 20% should not be too difficult. In this case, by doubling the $80. Common word problems. Maybe an item that costs $20, whatever the item is, and the discount is 15%. And Spiky tells us that he receives $27 as a total discount, how many did Spiky buy? So in this case, the situation is not direct, and students need to work out some information that are missing for them to answer the question that they need to answer. So in this case, they need to know that one item, what is a discount that Spiky receives. So $20, 15%. Again, students must be fluent with benchmark calculations like 10%. They should know that 10% is simply $2 in this case, and from that, a simple proportionate reasoning allow them to work out things like 5%. And so 15% is not too difficult to figure out. $3. And once they know that each item Spiky receives a $3 discount, and given that Spiky tells us his total discount is $27, a simple division allows students to get to the answer to the question asked. Another common application for percentage is profit and loss. Maybe a shop buys an item at $3 and it wants to make a 40% profit. So calculations like that is yet another common application in this topic. Yet another application, commission. So students might be familiar with the idea of a salesperson making his living selling things by making commissions. So if an item costs that much, $4,250, and the commission he earns, the salesman earns, is 10%, students should be able to work out how much the salesperson receives by making that sale. And yet another common situation students encounter is the interest rate that banks give for certain savings. Maybe a bank might say that every year, per annum, the saver would receive an interest rate of 2%, and Spiky decides to save $9,000 for a year, and they should be able to calculate how much interest Spiky receives, and therefore how much money Spiky gets in addition to the amount that he already saved. So how much will there be in his account after 1 year? And again, students should be able to do calculations like that mentally using benchmarks. 1%, 10%. I suppose 10% is not difficult. 10% is $900, and 1% is $90. So 2% is not difficult to find out. Another situation that students get, tax, such as goods and services tax in Singapore, or value-added tax in Thailand, or income tax in general. So if the tax on goods is 7% and something costs $200, students should be able to say 10% is $20, 1% is $2. So 7% is 7 times $2. Likewise, if the item costs $150, then they must be able to say, well, 10% is $15 and 1% is $1.50, $1.50, and 7% is 7 times $1.50. And another common use that students will encounter when they are a little bit older is the use of percent in describing chances, likelihood, or probability. So these are some common situations that students would encounter in solving problems related to percentage. In this video, we look at some important things that we need to help students with in solving word problems related to the topic of percentage. What are some instructional implications? We must help students have a mental image of two situations: part of a whole and change. For instance, in a word problem such as an item costs $20 and there's a 15% discount, students must have the idea what was the price before, and then a discount was given, and what is the price now. So in a sense, that fits into the mental model of a change. The price before, a change happened, the change being a discount was given. And then afterwards, what is the price? So word problems like that kind fits into the mental model of the change situation. In another word problem that involved 50 children in a group and 10 of them are boys, and we want to calculate how many percent of the group of children are boys. This fits into the mental image of part of a whole. The 10 boys, they are really part of a group of children. So this is one important instructional implication in helping students with word problem. Have we instilled in them very clearly mental models that are important in situations involving percent? Of course, other things like reading, comprehension, being able to interpret final answers, things that we commonly know as important in solving word problems. Those are other things that we as teachers need to think about. In this video, I want to emphasize the importance of mental models. And for percent, there are two basic mental models that students should have. See you next time at Teacher University.